I'm Peter Marks, enjoying the good life after a long theater journalism career at the Washington Post and New York Times.
And I'm Elizabeth Vincentelli, and I write theater reviews and features for the New York Times. So, bienvenue to another edition of Marks and Vincentelli, the outstanding, though non-Webby winning theater podcast. We have
It's award season, and we never seem to win any. I mean, how many years do we have to do this? And how many of these, quote, highly regarded theater conversations, unquote, and that is indeed a real quote, do we have to record before, the Nobel Committee takes note?
Listen, I mean, I don't know about you, but, did we venture into this to win awards? Really, did we?
Elizabeth, everybody enters all forms of theater journalism to win awards.
No, to make money, which we're raking in.
That's the more important. I guess that's true.
No, we're have neither. So that's it. But you know what? The cult status is a good one for us. I think being a cult theater podcast that people,
I agree.
One day
Yes.
I feel like we'll be vindicated.
We're an acquired taste.
That's right. But, okay, so unlike us, today we have a guest who's up for a major award this season. And the Tonys recently announced the nominations for the 78th installment of the accolades, and they will be given out on June 8th. And one of the nominees is a playwright who got a nod for Best Play with the very first Broadway script. And it's called John Proctor is the Villain. And her name is Kimberly Belflower, which is a great name, by the way.
Which is a beautiful name. Oh, isn't it a great name?
So good.
I know. It sounds like a Jane Austen character to me. Kimberly will tell us about this wonderful journey she's been on, bringing this serio-comedy into the world, and what it took to hone the play, which was birthed, believe it or not, 7 years ago in a college collaboration project among 3 colleges, and then had its professional premiere, if you will, in 2022 at Studio Theater in Washington. She'll tell us how she evolved the premise, which revolves around a high school class reading Arthur Miller's seminal McCarthy-era allegory, The Crucible, and the events involving sexual assault that convulsed the class.
And the play has gotten great reviews, both in DC and now on Broadway. And the New York Times, Jesse Green, described it as a vital new play in a thrilling production at the Booth Theater on Broadway. And the lead role is played by Sadie Sink, who probably you would know from, if you watch Stranger Things, she plays Max on that series, not the Broadway show, the series. And the play, John Proctor is the Villain, brings the concerns of the MeToo movement into an English class in Georgia. And Sink and 2 others in the cast, Gabriel Ebert, who's very familiar on Broadway, is a great actor, who plays the charismatic English teacher, and Fina Strazza, who plays one of Sink's classmates. So they all got nominated. And that's, I think total the play got 7.
Right.
Including for the director, Danya Taymor, and that's the most nominated non-musical this season, I believe. So it's a good haul. So we're pleased to welcome Kimberly to Marks and Vincentelli.
Welcome, Kimberly. We're thrilled to have you here. Since this is your, right off the bat, you get nominated for Tonys for your first play on Broadway. Not only that, you have a basket of them, 7 nominations for John Proctor's The Villain. Tell us a little bit about how and when you started writing plays.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I first started writing plays. I guess there's a formal and an informal answer to that. I formally started writing them in college. I took my first playwriting class as an undergrad, but then I just took one, and then I didn't really get serious about it until I moved to New York. I'm originally from Georgia, and I moved to New York, and it was the first time I'd ever lived outside of Georgia. And I was kind of finding places to take classes. Primary Stages has that awesome performing arts school, and I was taking classes there. And so that's kind of the formal answer. But then my mom, my whole family besides me farms, and my mom will say that when she used to send me and my brother outside to play, that I would take like a rock and a stick and make them talk to each other while my brother was like running wild. So the less formal question is that I've always been writing plays, even before I knew what plays were really. Yeah.
What was your first time like seeing a play and thinking, oh, I could do that, as opposed to like a TV show or a movie or
Yeah, I mean, like I fell in love with theater as soon as I found it, but I think it took a little bit to recognize that like I could do it from like a writing standpoint. I think like because of I grew up in a really rural area, and I think it was, I'm trying to remember I think it wasn't until I was like a junior in college and I had a professor who gave me like a Humana Festival anthology. And I was like, oh, plays are still being written.
Oh my God.
I think like in my mind, I was like, oh, it's Shakespeare and it's Tom Stoppard and it's all of these things that like are these that felt so far away from me. And yeah, I remember reading that anthology. I remember that Carlos Murillo play, Dark Play or Stories for Boys was in that one. Yeah. And so like that was just huge. And then that was around the same time that first big Sarah Rule anthology came out. And I remember sitting on a couch in Barnes and Noble when I was like 20 and being like, oh my God, you can do this. So I think it was like in my early, like encountering new plays for the first time. When I was in my early 20s was when I was kind of like this.
But what was special about theater for you that you decided to write plays instead of screenplays? Like that's where like the jump is interesting to me because
I just love it so much. I mean, I don't know. I think that like, you know, I'm not going to say anything that other people haven't said a million times, but I think that it's that shared collective experience that can't be digitized. It can't be paused. I also like, I grew up in the church and I don't go to church anymore, but I think that like theater feels so holy to me in the same way that like I think I wanted church to feel. And it is that kind of like our collective attention all on the same place. We're all having individual experiences, but we're all having a collective experience. There's just nothing in the world like it. I love movies, I love TV, but the quality of my attention, I think when I am watching those things is so different than the way it is when I'm watching theater. And the conversations I have about theater when I watch theater with someone else it's just so different. I mean, that sounds like stupid. I'm like, it's different.
No, but it's true though.
Yeah, I also think that I really just love language, and you know, I'm trying to like write some film and TV and like every playwright in America, but I like that is such a visual medium. And I like my plays are very, very talky, and I love like kind of finding the ways that different characters express themselves and kind of the musicality of that language, which also feels like such a theatrical thing.
Yeah, I want to ask about how much, you know, when I found out you were from Georgia, and obviously the setting of the play is in a rural part or in northern Georgia, I think it's right. But first, along the lines of what we were talking about with your evolution and that your early days. Our last guest on the show was a guy named Jeffrey Seller, who is the producer of Hamilton for the audience. You know, they'll know by now, obviously. And in his book, and I heard this before that even, that you were Jeffrey Seller's au pair. And I was stunned. I mean, was that like a weird convergence that was completely coincidental? It wasn't like Eve Harrington like stalking outside his house, waiting for him to come home and saying, "Do you have kids you need watching?"
Oh, that would be a better story. It was completely coincidental. I moved to New York when I was 23. I just turned 23. through a friend of a friend. I like a friend of a friend's was like an assistant to various people, and she posted something on her Facebook that was like, I have a client that's looking for a nanny. They specifically want someone that's like young and has like an interest in like the arts and blah, blah, blah. I don't remember the way it said, but I was just like, that's me. I could do that. And she got me an interview. And then I remember she told me, she was like, one of the dads is in theater, but don't mention that in the interview. Just like, and it was like, and it was also like, I knew his name was Jeffrey, but I didn't know his last name at the interview. And, and I like the kids were there, and it was like really, I was talking to Jeffrey and his partner at the time, Josh, but also like it was kind of a test and kind of how I interacted with the kids and that kind of thing. And then it wasn't until I got hired that I found out who he was. And I remember like being there and being like, you certainly look familiar. and like producers, sometimes you don't recognize. But I mean, when I was 16, I asked my parents for a trip to New York, and that was all I wanted for my birthday and Christmas. And they were so amazing. They're such great parents. And they told me that I could see something alone and that they would walk me to the theater and pick me up after. Ooh. And I could pick it. And I was immediately like, Rent. Rent.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, like it just beyond. And Jeffrey's been such an amazing friend and mentor to me. I think I told you at the time, it felt like a grad school, just to like listen to his phone calls and go to like readings of things and just kind of soak that up. It was so far away from anything I had ever been in.
But I do want to say I'm seeing a 6-part Netflix series called Bellflower, in which it tracks this life, and I see you with a script. You're watching the kids, and Jeffrey's walking in and out of the kitchen, and you keep thinking, when's the moment I slip this in front of him, and it gets me produced on Broadway. Now I mean, it happened, but not that way.
Not that way. Yeah. It's so, I think like I took it, I think that like something Jeffrey and I have in common, we had like very different upbringings, but we both like don't come from theater families. We don't come from money. And both kind of like clawed our way like through tooth and nail to like be in the world that we wanted to be in. And I think like I knew that I didn't want to ask him for any favors, and I wanted to like earn his respect just like as a person. I was taking care of his kids, just want to. And so he didn't read anything of mine until after I finished working for him. Yeah. So I asked him to write one of my letters of recommendation to grad school, but I was like, I know you haven't read my plays, so I'm asking for this just like as my employer and as like someone who knows me as a person. And then, it wasn't until I went to grad school that he read one of my plays, and then he read an early draft of John Proctor, because I started writing John Proctor before I had an agent. And I went to him to kind of be like, I'm kind of getting courted now by these agents. I don't know like what to do. And so he read the play, and then we had an amazing conversation about that. And
Fascinating.
How did you come up with the idea to flip the script? I mean, the concept for the play, which is kind of deceptively simple. It's like, okay, well, what if he was not the good guy that is, the victim?
Yeah.
Like, how did that, I mean, had you been in a production of The Crucible? It's done so often in high schools and, like.
I know, yeah. I think like both in my high school and college, I like narrowly missed productions of The Crucible, like they had either done it before I got there or right after I left. But so I had never been in one, but I read it in my junior year honors English lit class, just like in the play. And then I read it again my freshman year of college, like in a script analysis class. And in both of those environments, took it very much at face value. I also like, if you know the play, the character Beth is very much me in high school. And so I just like took everything any authority figure said to me as like the word of God. And I was just like, if they, like, okay, if they tell me that John Proctor is this good guy, and like, especially in my high school, I remember we talked a lot about like his Christian moral fortitude and like kind of, because it was such a religious area. And so And I also like, I don't know, I think like a lot of young girls are fascinated by the Salem witch trials. And I actually read this beautiful poem by Diane Seuss last week where she talks about being in her high school production of The Crucible and it giving her an excuse to scream and writhe and do all these things that she wanted to do. And so I do think that like the Salem witch trials and The Crucible has that power over girls, even if we aren't like questioning like the way that the play treats its girls. But then, so yeah, I never questioned it. And then in 2017, I had just finished grad school at UT Austin, and I had just read this book by Stacy Schiff. She's this amazing historian. And she wrote this book, The Witches, Salem 1692, that was all about like giving more context to this moment in history and really going into the trauma that all of these girls had been through, sexual assault, really intense violence. And that book just kind of like blew my brain open. I just love things that make me kind of question everything I thought I knew about something. And then that fall is when kind of the first tidal wave of MeToo broke. And I, like a lot of women and a lot of people, I just became like really consumed by it and was just reading everything and taking everything in on such an intense level. And then it was Woody Allen who called me to a witch hunt in an interview. And because I had just read this book and like that was on my mind, I was like, oh, I should reread The Crucible. That's the most famous work of art about witch hunts. And then rereading it with kind of the lens of Me Too so firmly on my eyes, that was when I was like, I think I literally said the sentence out loud to my dad. It's crazy because John Proctor feels like the villain. And then I like heard that and that kind of, so that's kind of like what set it into motion.
It's so interesting to me that you took this leap because he is, I would dare say, a revered figure in fiction, in I guess quasi-historical fiction. I don't know, and certainly elevated by Arthur Miller, because of the connection to the McCarthy era witch hunt, made him sort of seem to be the sort of a paragon of virtue. Did you find it at all daunting when you were presenting to an establishment that had grown up with this play too, that you were challenging that? Did you find resistance to your idea? You started this by workshopping it at colleges. Did you find a receptivity among English professors, among drama people to your notion, or was there a problem that you had to overcome in convincing people that this was a valid way to look at this play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't have any like major pushback. I had, like little moments here and there. But I think overall, like the play, I don't know, like the title is kind of like an intentional provocation, right? Like, and also like, I think the play, somebody asked me, they're like, do you think John Proctor is the villain? And I was like, I don't know if I believe in heroes and villains as like a black and white thing. I think that Shelby in my play thinks that he is the villain, and that is where the play gets it. So I think that like the play makes it clear that it's like the perspective of these characters, and also like something that we talk a lot about in like rehearsal processes and with the actors is that like multiple things can be true at the same time, right? Like,
very good point.
Like John Proctor is this like amazing moral man in a lot of ways. Like he does speak truth to power, and also he treats all of the women in the play abominably. Right. And so it's like, and Abigail too. Like Abigail is responsible for the deaths of like dozens of people, and also she was a victim. And like in my play, like Mr. Smith, I truly think is a great teacher. And he has positively impacted many lives.
That's interesting.
And also, he is a predator. So it's, like, and I think that's like in moments, I mean, in all moments, I think especially we're seeing right now in our culture, like it's so hard for us to hold multiple truths at the same time. And I think that's sometimes how we get into these really kind of binary moments of like good and bad, us and them. So I think that when I did get pushback, I would kind of push back on that pushback by offering that of like, absolutely, you're right. And I think that and this. But yeah, I mean, some people, are certainly like, oh, is this your Arthur Miller hit piece? And I'm like,
Not
no.
right.
I think it's pretty clear that it's not that. I love when someone has a very kind of what in retrospect feels obvious, like what if scenario.
Yeah.
Like I felt like when there was the Ivo Van Hove production of The Crucible on Broadway, like I feel like his what if scenario was what if they really were witches?
Yeah, totally.
What if they had powers?
Yeah.
And I think at the time, I felt a lot of pushback at the time against that idea. But I thought, because they were like, well, the show is meant, it's not literal, it's metaphor. I was like, well, what if it's not?
Exactly.
What if there really are witches? Does it make it okay to hunt them down?
Yeah.
You know? Like and I feel like you're doing the same thing. You're taking this thing like, what if? And then you're taking it into a whole, I think then you're making it your own. It's not like you're taking the Miller play and just tweaking it. Like it really goes into its own orbit that is very, very much its own. It's not like a para play on the first one.
Totally. I love that framing of like what ifs. And I feel like that's, if your play is going to be in the theatrical or literary canon, it has to be able to withstand those what ifs. And The Crucible can, because The Crucible is a great play. Like, and
Right.
I really believe that, right? Like, and so it's like my play, Ivo Van Hove's like interpretation of the play, like none of those are erasing the impact or the legacy of The Crucible. They're just they're like broadening it. So I love that framing.
And we should probably point out, the play really is not a deep dive deconstruction of the Crucible.
Right.
It's really the backdrop for this lovely set of scenes among the students in this class, and among the girls in the class who want to form a feminism club. That reveals a lot about the fissures among the boys and girls and how they look at the world. Are those characters, Kimberly, kids from your own high school? I mean, I don't mean, I'm not looking for lawsuits here to start, but do you recognize yourself in the play and your other close friends or the people you shared classroom space with?
Oh, certainly. And, I think really that they're all composites of different people. Like, I say that Beth is me and she is, but also like an early draft of the play, I sent to one of my best friends and I was like, oh, haha, you'll never guess which one is me, because like, it's so obvious. But then she wrote back and she was like, I know who you mean. And also they're all you. And
that's interesting.
And so it's like, they're all me, they're all my best friend from home. They're all, like I think like there are all these details that I've kind of taken from different people I grew up with, but certainly like, and that's been so gratifying, like from DC to Boston to now, like I've had people from my hometown come in various incarnations and see it. And for them to be like, I recognized that. Oh, that reminded me. And sometimes it's things that I didn't even think of. Sometimes I had somebody be like, oh my gosh, Shelby at that moment was so Victoria. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. So it's like these rhythms and these archetypes that just get in us as we grow up. It's so funny.
So again, just to make clear to the listeners, like the show is not the story of the Crucible. It's really not that at all. So it's not like it doesn't go at it from this angle. But one of the things I'm very far removed from my high school years, which were not even in this country, so we did not study the Crucible in high school at all. But like I feel like your ear for the dialogue is so spot on, and that to me is the hardest thing to capture. Like any kind of ear for any scene, it can be a teenage scene or it can be a particular social milieu, or it's very, very hard to get. But I feel like you really kind of nailed it. And is that something that did you have people read it and say like this is, or did you trust your instinct there and thinking this feels right to me?
Yeah, I trusted my instinct. I also when I'm writing, I will read my own dialogue out loud to myself. And And that, I mean, and I'm also like a big rewriter because I think like to really get those precise musical rhythms, which is the kind of dialogue I like to write, and it changes in each play and with each character, but like that is really what I'm drawn to. You do have to hear it out loud. And so like, yes, I'll read it out loud to myself, but then it's not until you get in a room with people that it's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. So I trusted my gut that like the play that I was writing needed to be in this like very grounded everyday dialogue. I also think there's such a musicality in the way that teenagers talk, and there is such a musicality in Southern like dialects and Southern rhythms and ways of expressing oneself. And so I was, and you know, I haven't lived in, well, actually, I do live in the South now. I was going to say, like, I haven't lived in the South in a long time. I do live in Atlanta, but in my mind, it's like very different than where I grew up, you know. But I think I was very attuned to that. I also like I have people ask a lot about like the rhythms of like the teenagers, and I am so like I teach college. I developed this play with college students, and so I have like been in close contact with young people throughout the development of the play. But also I think that like even though our references might change and like the internet has changed things, I do think there is some level of like teenage expression that is kind of timeless and universal. And so just like that moment in time of kind of like you're trying on different identities, you're trying to figure out like, especially as a young girl, like how much space I can take up and when I bloom and when I shrink. And I guess like staying in touch with like those kind of more timeless rhythms through a more contemporary lens and trying to get both really, really precise.
Do you write in sequence? When you start a play, do you go scene by scene? Is that how you write them? Or do you write bits of the play? And do you know when you start writing where you're headed? Towards, do you know what the sort of the ending of the play is going to be when you start?
I do not write in sequence. I write wildly. And like for a while, my dialogue typically doesn't have character names attached to it because I have a hard time putting a character name unless I know that's their name.
Wow.
And it takes me a while. Like I feel like sometimes I can't name them unless I know them, unless I've been like thinking about them for a long time. Yeah. So then I'll kind of like learn who's speaking by like writing. So like there are like early versions of this play where it's, you know, like 50 pages of just like dialogue without character names. And that's like kind of how I figure out like, oh, there are 4 voices in this little like chorus, or like, oh, there's like this over here. And I'll write very out of sequence. And I kind of write to find it. Sometimes I know where I'm heading when I start, and sometimes I don't. With this play, pretty early on, like before I even finished a draft, like when I was still kind of in the exploratory phase, I knew that it ended in a dance to green light. I didn't know how we were going to get there, and I didn't know the context, but I just knew that to be true. So sometimes it's like, okay, at a certain point, I've realized that this is on the horizon, and I'm trying to get there.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but it changes every play. But yeah, I don't know.
The play is set in 2018, right?
Yes.
Was that like what do you mean by that? I mean, why was it not brought in to now, or you know, assuming that, let's say that's when you started writing it, I don't know, but why did you keep it there? And why is it important that it's that time?
Yeah, it is when I started writing it. And there was like a brief moment when it was set in 2019 because I got into Ojai Playwrights Conference in 2019 and it was like, let's update it. But that like almost immediately felt wrong. I think like it was born out of such an impulse in me that was tied to a moment in time, which was kind of like the early days of MeToo. And so knowing that like the Harvey Weinstein allegations broke in, I think, October of 2017, that this is like the following semester in these girls' lives. And so that was such the original impetus for the play too, which is that like as a 30-year-old woman, MeToo is making me look back on things and be like, oh, I understand things with new language now. I'm able to name things in a way that I've never been able to. And like to wonder like what it would be like to be coming of age in a moment like that. Like it felt like I was questioning everything and that the world was shifting under my feet. So like, what if I was 16 and I like was still trying to figure out who I was and the world was shifting around me? And it felt like the kind of cultural temperature around that was so specific in that first year, or first 6 months, that like it changed and continues to change. But just being in those early days felt so important to what this play was doing and what I was kind of after. So yeah, after that brief kind of flirtation with updating it, I went back and trusted that it needed to be 2018.
Are you surprised at the response? Is it a revelation to you, Kimberly, that it gets this kind of reaction from people you don't know, who have no idea who Kimberly Belflower was, growing up in Georgia, and they learn about you, obviously, but also this work of art becomes something that is theirs too. How does that wash over you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I felt myself get a little choked up just when you were saying that. So it's so profoundly moving to me. I didn't anticipate it. I never expect it. It is so wild. I think, like, I remember writing certain sections of the play and being like, only I will think this is funny, or like, oh, this is like such an inside Georgia thing, or like, so it is like the play of mine so far in my career that has been like the closest to the bone, and so for that to be the play that like ripples out and feels like people kind of take ownership of and love so deeply, I think every time it surprises me. There was like a moment like early in previews when I was just like, taking notes and scribbling furiously and being like, that moment is bad. And then like hearing something and putting my pen down and realizing that like multiple women in the row with me were crying. And I was like, oh my God, like, it just like kind of these moments of like zooming outside of my body to kind of see the reception around the play. I can't wrap my head around it. I don't know if I ever will be able to, or if like a year from now, I'll just like wake up in the night and be like, but it's completely insane.
How did you work with the director, Danya Taymor, on this production? She's like the little like young person whisperer now. She's did really well with The Outsiders, and she seems to have like a kind of magic touch there. But so how did you work with her? Like, did you tweak stuff, or no? Is the play did you consider the play like done, or were you open to little?
I'm always tweaking. You're gonna have to like drag my computer out of my hands if you want me to stop. But at this point, so the play had 2 regional productions before this production, and during both of those, I did like a significant amount of rewrites. Like during studio in DC, I was like resequencing the entire middle of the play. I like combined 2 scenes into one. And then at Huntington in Boston, I cut 15 minutes off of it so that we wouldn't have to take an intermission like we did at studio. And like, so I like the play has really gone through it. And so in this production, I was doing smaller kind of like more surgical rewrites. But I worked incredibly closely with Danya. And it's so funny, like, when the play was originally going to be produced in the 2020 season, and then we all know what happened in 2020. And but as we were lining it up with studio, I had phone calls with 3 different directors, and one of whom was Danya Taymor. And I had met Danya in grad school. We have a lot of friends in common, and then her schedule didn't work, and like we both moved on. And then like, when this production started to like, Sadie Sink read the play, and then like Sue Wagner and John Johnson came on board. And anyway, and all of them were like, we think Danya Taymor would be great for this. And I was like, well, I do too. I have the beginning,
That's the best.
And it was the best. And it just felt like for both of us, like this fated thing kind of came back around. And she and I, we worked extremely, extremely closely together. I was in rehearsal every single day.
At what point did Sadie Sink come into the process? I mean, she's fantastic in it, and like it's just what a great performance. But like, was it pretty early on that she decided she wanted to do it, or?
It was between Studio and Huntington. So Studio happened in 2022 and Huntington was in 2024.
Okay.
And in 2023, well, it's actually the fall of 2022 when Sadie read the play and wanted to do it. And then in the spring of 2023, we did a workshop in reading in New York with Sadie and Fina, who plays Death. She was also in that workshop. She was 17 at the time because she's 19 now, which is crazy. And Danya directed. And so we had this like dreamy 3 days. And we're like, we want this to happen. Everybody wants this to happen. And then like the writers' strikes into Hollywood happened. And then like all of these, and so like Sadie's Stranger Things schedule was kind of thrown into the air. And like all of these kinds of like these speed bumps came up in the road. And so then there was a moment when it was like, okay, well, Huntington wants to do the play and we don't know if or when Broadway is actually going to happen. So like, I still have work I want to do on the play. So like, we're going to move ahead with this regional production. And then like in that time is when this kind of came together. But yeah, so Sadie's been attached for like a little over 2 years, I guess. And she's so great in the play. And also just the fact that she is like this megawatt star and she specifically wanted to do a new play and then also wanted to do something where she was in an ensemble. She said like, I don't want to be the only lead. I want to like be in a group, which is just smart in a way that I like, she was like 21 when she said that. I was like, how are you this smart?
Very wise move.
Yeah.
I kind of love the fact that Fina, who's playing the character closest to you, got a Tony nomination.
I know.
You know, it's like, of course, yeah, Beth, yeah, it's all loaded. The dice are loaded here for Fina. But no, that's great. So you alluded earlier, and we should let you go soon, yes. Kimberly. But you alluded to other plays. And that's always, you know, a curiosity to people. Once they see a play of yours that they gravitate to, they want to know what else is in that head. So, where are you? What's cooking?
Oh my gosh!
That you're allowed to talk about. You don't have to give names of plays. But are you writing more plays right now?
I am. I've been working on a new play for a while that I'm trying to crack. That is so my rural hometown in Georgia is the birthplace of the Cabbage Patch Kid dolls. Yeah. And there's a lot there in terms of like how they were created. And then also like my great Aunt Betty, who was 96 when she died, the only job she ever had outside of the home was hand sewing Cabbage Patch Kid faces.
No. Oh, wow.
Yes. And her daughter Doris had a job painting their eyes. And so there was this whole generation of these Appalachian women who were wives and mothers and didn't like enter the workforce. They had jobs essentially being artists. And it is so profound and beautiful. Anyway, but then there's also like this weird stuff, like you visit the Cabbage Patch Kids at this place called Babyland General Hospital, and all the employees wear scrubs, and there are live births every hour. And it's crazy. It's a fever dream. So anyway, I've been trying to like crack that play, and I either haven't figured out the through line or it's going to be like a 4-hour play. So
I'm ready for 4 hours about Cabbage Patch dolls.
Okay,
I really
great.
am. Or rather, the people who make them.
Yeah. Well, my 32-year-old daughter was Cabbage Patch crazed.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So you have like a built-in, generation of, she'll be in for the 4-hour version.
Yes.
She'll bring
amazing.
her old Cabbage Patch dolls to that's what you're going to get, But that sounds great. I love that kind of specificity.
I love that. Yes. Well, that's the thing. It feels very grounded, like John Proctor as well, which is kind of like big story, but it does feel very grounded.
Yeah.
That's really why it works. I mean, one of the reasons.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time talking to.
Oh my gosh, my total pleasure.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch the Bellflower flower.
Oh my God, Peter, you did not.
I did.
That was really good.
I did.
Really good.
Come on.
Really, you don't have to say that. That was really bad.
No, I loved my student council slogan when I was in high school when I was running for student council was Bellflower Power.
Okay. Final.
A writer, once a writer, always,
So good.
That's so great.
There's nothing to be added to after that. That is like, that's it.
Yeah.
Curtain.
Thank you. Kimberly, You have our best wishes for continuing success. Thanks for joining us. John Proctor is the villain, is playing at the Booth Theater in the heart of Broadway.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Like your first play and boom, you have a Tony nomination.
Right.
I mean, you can still live the dream in theater.
Yeah, and it's also weird, to think that she was the babysitter for our last guest.
Yes.
And
We tried to have a connection.
Jeffrey Seller.
Even the most bizarre one
Strange.
between all our guests. Like the next one will have to have some crazy connection to this show. We have to think on that.
Doesn't it make you think everybody's got to play in them if they can just, if they just have the writing skills to get it done?
Well, that's a big if. That's a big if.
That's so true. Yeah.
Anyway, it was great.
Well, I'm glad we got her for Marx and Vincitelli. Another get.
Yes, and we're glad to have your support. Thanks for listening, as always. So if you're theater-loving best friend, cousin, mother, neighbor, PTA president, vague acquaintance that you barely know from the subway, if that person craves meaty theater conversations, you should tell them about us.
Right.
Most of our shows are free, actually. And, there's some nuggets that are for paying subscribers. So we try to spread the goods. You can meet us at marksvincentelli.substack.com.
And you out there who have been hearing us over the months and years and you're not yet a paying subscriber, please consider it because you can hear my voice is going. I've had laryngitis and I need a doctor. Please contribute. And we guarantee no tariffs will ever be imposed.
Ever. And we're also on social media. I'm on Blue Sky. Peter's on Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook. Mostly we do our talking on the podcast. And we'll be back again soon with another edition of Marx and Vincitelli.